Welcome everyone to Milfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Scavengers Reign, the first two episodes of the show, which are called The Signal and The Storm, respectively. This is a Patreon-sponsored review, kind of. It was kind of a prize that was won as a bonus thing, but thank you to Alison for picking this show. This is an animated series which originally aired or was released on HBO Max, and is just a one-season show, which I didn't look into too in depth, but I assume it was just a limited series and it wasn't something that was hoping for a season two. I could be wrong on that. If you know the show, by all means, let me know in the comments. It seems to have come out last year. This is one that completely went past me. I'd never heard of this. I was told, hey, this is the show I want, and I went and checked it out. And because they're only 25-minute episodes, I watched two for the purpose of this, to get a good taste of what it was. Now, it is science fiction, which I like a lot, so that's cool. I mean, the basic premise is that a group of different people who were working on a spaceship in the future, their ship, something went wrong. At least in the first two episodes, we don't really know what went wrong. We kind of just start off with them already in their various, evacuation pods, which are on the planet. And we see that some of the pods didn't quite make it. But they're kind of scattered. There's two characters who are together, and are kind of working together to try and call down the main ship they came from, for supplies, for the other survivors who are asleep on the ship, in cryosleep. There's a character who is kind of isolated and is trapped in his pod because of how he landed in a tree, and he's kind of going stir crazy. And then the other character is a woman who's on her own, but she's got a robot with her who is sort of keeping her company and helping, plant things, farm things. Because, when we start the show, they're already been there for a few months, so they've kind of adapted a little bit. But that's also why the guy came in the name, the one who's trapped, is even more crazy. His hair's growing out, his beard's growing out, and he's getting kind of kooky and delirious. So that's the basic gist. But I guess the one big thing I've not really said yet, that's definitely probably the most memorable thing of the show, for better or worse, is just how much it focuses on the alien life that are on this planet. And we see examples repeatedly. I couldn't possibly name... Well, not that I would know the names of them, but I couldn't possibly list every single different type of species or creature or some form of monstrous plant that we see over the course of this first two episodes. And it seems like the characters have adapted in some ways where they use some of the life forms. Like, they literally use some of the life forms as breathers at one point, or inflatable life forms to lift them up out of a canyon. And I don't know how alien these life forms are to the humans in this world, in the sense that obviously these aliens come from this planet, but I don't know if are these all new species to these characters, or are these species that the human race has found and understood, so they knew once they saw them, oh, we can use them for this, this, and this, or have they just figured this out since they arrived because they've never encountered anything like this before? I actually don't know. It's a bit unclear, at least in these first couple of episodes. The main thing that kind of sticks out to me about this is just how much of a tone piece it kind of is. There's a lot of atmospheric music, which is probably my favourite thing about it. It really tries to set this kind of melancholy mood. The characters are trying to survive and they're trying to get out, but it definitely... there is danger of sorts, and it's kind of unclear sometimes just how dangerous things are. I wouldn't say any of the animals feel necessarily villainous. It feels more just like they're acting as the natural way they would in their part of the animal kingdom, or of the food chain, as it were. But it's about these characters surviving against these creatures and the elements. I mean, episode 2 is largely about a storm that just kind of gets in the way of everything. So, I mean, I will talk about what happens in both episodes as much as I feel like I need to. I wouldn't say it really spoils much, though, if I'm really honest. Like I say, it is more of a tone piece than it is about a plot where you're getting plot beat after plot beat. I mean, the first episode starts with the two characters who are together, which is Ursula and Sam, and they are basically trying to build a radio beacon to call down the main ship that they departed from, which is still orbiting above. And it fails. And a lot of the stuff they're using in this show is like biological. Not that their technology is inherently biological, but they're using like smart biological like fungi and stuff to act as like wiring and things like that. There's a lot of that going on. The robot that we see as well, Levi is the robot's name. She's been fixed with some of this stuff as well in her circuitry, but it's making her act a little bit differently. Like she's making decisions and she's feeling compelled to do things. So there's a lot of like organic mixing with mechanicals, a lot of that kind of thing going on in the organic systems that are here. Which is somewhat interesting. It's different. It feels super alien. If anything, I would almost argue there's just too many of them, like too quick. Like I almost feel like by the end of even just the first episode, I'd seen so many species and so many different things that it was almost overwhelming. I was appreciative while episode 2 did add a few more things. We did see some of the same creatures or species again, which I liked because it was like, okay, if it's just going to be constant turnover where there's always something new, I think that would get a bit, relentless. Make me feel like, no, there's like common species we're going to see from time to time. We're going to see this type of thing. There's like one of these, there's like a dome type creature walking on legs that has like 4 tongues that we see quite a bit of in both episodes. So stuff like that. There's these little flying ones that sort of like blend in with the surface and just various things. But the first episode ends with them successfully calling down the ship, and that's kind of your big, and it's really dramatic. The music kind of swells as this thing's coming down into the atmosphere, and that's very much how the first one ends. And they have to go on a bit of a trek to do that. They have to go get like the spare battery from one of the other pods that's in a dangerous cave, and this is where we get all the breather stuff, where they're using like one of these creatures, that this fish they've caught that just acts as a gas mask basically. So definitely some unique visuals. I mean, I will say one thing that sticks out is that there's repeated times in both episodes where characters seem like something really bad's happening to them that feels like, oh, this should be their death, and it just kind of isn't. Like they're just kind of fine afterwards, and it's not like I can say for sure that the alien thing that's happening to them feels like they should definitely be dead because it is truly alien. But at the same time, like in episode 2, the guy, Sam, he gets like sucked on by this big bug with big fangs, and it kind of feels like afterwards he's just a little bit weak, but it's otherwise fine. In the first episode, Ursula drops her breather, right, because she starts hyperventilating, and she breathes in whatever's in this cave, and she starts having like these like crystal diamond things popping out of parts of her skin, and it kind of felt like, oh, you're a goner, this stuff's just going to consume your entire body, until it just kind of broke away. And there could be some reasoning for that. There could be more to it that kind of makes more sense as the show goes on. But there's definitely a few times where I felt like, oh, this feels like it should just be them, they're done for, and then they're just kind of not. But it definitely feels like they want to give you weird visuals, which I can't fault them for that at the very least, because they definitely feel like they do come with very unique, very kind of different styles. I suppose actually on style, I should talk about the animation itself. Now, I'm not like a huge animation guy typically. There are some animated movies that I really love, but I would say that in general, it's not like a medium that I gravitate towards for one reason or the other. I just don't tend to find it quite as engaging as well done live action. But obviously I'm a comic book reader, and I do tend to like art and comic books a lot, but not all comic books, of course. And I think when I was looking at the animation on this show, the thing that was sticking out to me is that the planet and the ships and all that, I really kind of liked the feel of those, right? Again, it kind of fit into that melancholic sci-fi that they were going for. I think the one thing that I didn't like in the animation for this show, based on these first 2 episodes, is I really wasn't fond of the humans, or specifically their heads, their faces. It's a big stickling point for me in a lot of comic books where the art will be fine, except I really don't like the style of how the faces are drawn. And I felt kind of like that here, where the faces just felt like I don't even think there's a good like proper critique for it, other than I just don't like it. I just don't like how the faces look. And I don't think I have anything more to add to that. But The general vibe of the art in general though is quite good. The general vibe of the planet is very colorful. It's definitely kind of in between. Like there's a little bit of like Studio Ghibli kind of creeping in some of the elements, I would say, into how it looks. But there's also kind of not an art deco. That's not quite right, but there's definitely a vibe that it's going for, and I think it for better or worse, depending on your taste, I think it's absolutely nailing a style that it's trying to be. It doesn't feel like there's any lack of talent here in achieving what they're going for. So, take that as the compliment that I think I mean it as. So, but yeah, So I mean, the funny thing is if I have another critique about the story itself, is that after watching 2 episodes, I'm a little concerned that, because episode 1 ends with like all these characters are spread out. One's in a pair, one's with a robot, one's on his own, and I'll get to talking about the guy on his own because he's got some stuff to talk about. But they all see the ship coming down at the end, and they understand, oh, someone else must have triggered that to come down. Now we have a place that we should go to, right? So the other characters, all of them individually, kind of look up and think or say, hey, that's the goal. We all get back to the ship. And episode 2, like some of the characters try and start that journey, some better than others, but they basically all get blocked by this storm that kind of comes in and puts them all in peril in different ways, and how they all get into these different situations that they have to survive. And I think I'm a little bit worried that maybe not the whole show. I don't know. Like I say, I don't know like what the layout of the rest of the show is. But it did give me a slight concern that it's going to maybe be a little repetitive, where it's just about trying to get to a destination, and every episode is going to present more obstacles in order, between them and that destination. I think that's a little bit one note, potentially. And I don't know if them encountering different species on the planet isn't necessarily exciting enough or interesting enough where I wouldn't start to get just bored of, okay, you thought of another cool design for an alien creature. That's nice, but is it a compelling story in the way it's challenging the characters to get to the next thing? Because I wouldn't say that all the characters feel super developed after this necessarily. I think the 2 that are together, bizarrely, are the ones that feel the least developed, because it feels like they're just trying to get away, which is fine, but I never really felt like by the end of episode 2, all of them just sort of fighting for each other a little bit, that I got much in the way of character. You would think they'd have the most character because they can talk to each other and would be able to get things. Whereas the other characters who are on their own, or on their own with a robot, do get a little bit more. In fact, so the woman with the robot, Azzy, her name, she like has a flashback in episode 2 where you see that another woman was flirting with her before they were going into cryo sleep, and it just gives you a little bit of context. But you also have just in general her vibe with the robot, where she's kind of taking the robot for granted, but the robot, as we find out in episode 2, is doing more and more things that it's not really supposed to do. Nothing bad, nothing like dangerous or anything, but it seems to feel compelled to want to like help the local fruit grow, which is of no benefit to the woman because the human body can't eat this stuff, but the wildlife here can, and it's almost like the planet is, got an organic kind of like, not hive mind necessarily, but by having this like gunk in it from the planet, it's giving the robot kind of like a nice compulsion to want to help the ecosystem or something like that. But having Azzy have to kind of admit, hey, I rely on you, and kind of, because she's kind of a hard ass about it. She gives the robot a hard time in the first episode for reacting a certain way, for being slow, for wasting a flash grenade or whatever. It feels like there's a little bit of development there, so she felt more layered to me by the end of episode 2. I think out of all the characters, I think I got the most out of her in terms of development, even though I think her and the robot hiding from the storm wasn't as exciting as what the pair of characters were doing in their little adventure, where they end up hiding inside like a creature that's in the sea during the storm to get away from everything, but it acts as like a big kind of snorkel for them. But they end up fighting like a giant like bug thing inside, which tries to eat them. It actually paralyzes them at one point briefly, but they're able to fight it off with a knife. And then the other character, Cayman, He's got the whole "I'm on my own, going crazy" thing, where he's trapped in the first episode, and it's actually what I'm going to call the leader of the weird babies. So there's these weird baby aliens that are kind of crawling up and down the trees, and the sort of leader of them, the main one, kind of like even before they get him out, where they kind of like make a hole in his pod, and he tries to jump out, and he ends up actually falling all the way to the bottom and almost hitting the ground, but he just kind of freezes, almost like they telepathically hold him for a second so he can land safely, because they definitely have telepathic powers. Do they have telekinetic powers? It seems like it, because they kind of pick him up a couple times throughout both episodes. But they basically have this moment where he like is looking at the alien baby, and then inside his head he sees like the faces of people he cares about all kind of meshed together, and it's a very kind of otherworldly, Lost, Twin Peaks style visual he gets. And then when he tries to just jump out and they save him, they kind of get into his head and convince him that he's seeing this woman from his past, and they even feed him. He's very hungry, of course, because he's been kind of living off whatever's been in the pod. And they make him think that he's sitting at a dinner table with this woman. Again, I'm assuming it's a woman based on his past, maybe a wife or an old girlfriend or whatever. But in reality, we see the alien baby's actually got like a umbilical cord style thing going to his mouth, and is just feeding him whatever the food is that they're, whatever natural thing that is getting shoved into his mouth. But in his mind, he's at a dinner table eating like a steak and stuff. Like he's having the fantasy of a lifetime, and he's like, oh, this is so good. But he's actually just being fed whatever this natural stuff is from the planet, from this alien baby. And the whole thing with episode 2 is that they lead him to a cave and keep sort of showing him this woman, and in the vision he tries to break away from her and say that he needs to get to a boat from the cabin they're in, but in reality he's just trying to get out of the cave. But of course the storm's going on outside, so he ends up being in danger, and the alien baby has to kind of telekinetically bring him back in, and it's a whole thing. Now it's an interesting little plot. I'm curious, is like, does this alien baby mean harm? Like, do they want him around because they like him as the idea of having him as a friend to take care of him because they think he needs taken care of? Are they keeping him because they're prepping him for lunch? They will want to eat him later, maybe? What is the purpose of them keeping him? Is it nefarious? Right now, it doesn't seem like it is, but it's that sort of thing where at any moment I am almost expecting their mouth to open and just have like rows and rows of teeth. Like, it could go that way, and I genuinely don't know. So, it's definitely an interesting thing. He kind of has like a moment or two of coherence where he's like, oh, I need to get to the ship. But he doesn't quite ever really make it very far. So, yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting little show because it doesn't really waste any time getting to like the core idea of they're on this planet, they've been here for a little bit, and they're, maybe finally going to try and like mount some way of getting off the planet. And they're encountering all this alien stuff on this planet, which does feel very alien, largely. The way they use the creatures and the various, like, floral and whatnot in different ways is quite interesting. My critique, maybe, though, like I said earlier, is maybe the idea that they're just going to keep getting, like, roadblocks on the way to their destination. And I don't know if that's that compelling as a ongoing story, necessarily. Now, I can't say for sure, of course, unless I actually watch more episodes, but it was kind of the concern I had after this second episode, was that it's just going to keep being more obstacles, rather than, oh, they all meet up at the ship soon, and then the plot evolves because they're together and they can do different things from then on. So, that would be my main concern at this point, but it does have a cool atmosphere, it does have a cool vibe. Some of the characters are starting to get a bit of development, which is nice. I'd presume that the pair of characters, they're not a couple, because they're not like a romantic relationship. They seem very different, but Ursula and Sam, I suspect, would get a bit more development going forward. Right now, they're kind of just vessels for stuff to happen to, and like to drive plot forward. So, I think the biggest asset it has is its general vibe and the music. I think the music adds a lot to it. The music gives it this feeling of like, it's like a mix of melancholia, but also at times kind of epic. Like they're on this like great journey, a great quest, whatever. It's really just a question for me if the characters ever get compelling enough that the actual engagement with them also rises up to match the vibes that are going on around them, right? Does it ever become more than just a series of random alien obstacles? That would be my like question about going forward with the show if I was deciding to. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the first 2 episodes of Scavengers Reign. By all means, if you've watched the show, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Do tell me if it evolves into more than what it is here in the first 2 episodes. Does it significantly change over the course of its run? I'll double check how many episodes there are because I'm curious actually. But I want to say I think there was 12. Yeah, 12. There's 12 episodes total. So yeah, very curious. Very curious. I will say, actually, to compare something in here, I mentioned comic books earlier. The woman that keeps appearing to Cayman in his mind from the alien baby, she has like these like full like white glasses that kind of mostly hide her eyes, and that's very reminiscent to me of a character who's in a comic book called The Nice House on the Lake, or Nice House by the Lake, by James Tynion IV, and I really like that comic. So I don't know if it's an intentional thing, and it is kind of a sign that there's something truly alien or malicious about her, or at least what she represents. Not that the real person it's based on was malicious, but that this entity that's pretending to be her in his mind is maybe up to something bad. It could be a sign of that, but I wanted to mention that because it made me think of Walter from Nice House by the Lake, or Nice House by the Sea, as the sequel is called. So that is me. So thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV, of course. You can like, subscribe, support on Patreon, all those things to help out a bunch, and of course check out all the other reviews that have been coming out. But thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?